And now our fourth story out front. Day 2 of contentious testimony in the George Zimmerman murder trial. For the first time today, the jury saw gruesome photos of Trayvon Martin splayed on the ground in the minutes after Zimmerman shot the teen. He says it was self-defense. Now, we're showing you these pictures, but we are choosing here at CNN not to show you some of the most graphic images. Martin Savage is in Sanford, Florida, covering the trial, and Trayvon Martin's family was there in the courtroom. They saw the photos we just showed, but also some other much more difficult to look at photos. How did they react?
It was a very, very difficult day for the family. It was difficult for everybody in the courtroom. We've all seen photographs before, but we had not seen these particular photographs, and they were quite striking. They are of the 17-year-old, just as you described, on the ground, clearly dead, and even showing the bullet wound, the entry wound that took his life. So all of that was combined with emotional testimony from the first responders that described the last breaths that this young man took. The tragedy sunk home clearly to the family. Sabrina Fulton, who is his mother, she just stared straight ahead, very stoic. You couldn't read any emotion in her face. Maybe that was pure emotion. And then on top of that, there is Tracy Martin, and that's Trayvon's father. He literally got up and had to walk out of the room. He didn't return until sometime later.
And Martin, let me ask you, a police sergeant who was one of the first to arrive on the scene when moments after Trayvon was killed, actually went on the stand today and answered questions. What did he say when he described those moments when he tried to save Trayvon?
Well, you know, all of this reminded the court that there was a victim, and of course we knew that, but up till now, especially in the presentation, you see George Zimmerman. He's the defendant here. He comes and goes in the courtroom. Trayvon Martin, up to this point, had been a name. But then you saw the photographs, and then you heard the depiction coming from this sergeant as he works on this teenager's body. He didn't know at that time that the young man had been shot through the heart, couldn't be saved. So he and another officer frantically worked to revive using CPR. It didn't work, of course, but it was dramatic to hear that attempt to save a life by first responders.
All right, Martin Savage, thank you very much. Martin, as we said, covering that trial in Florida. And I want to turn now to our legal analyst, Mark Nijame, who's also been watching the trial. Mark, those graphic photos were showed today. Trayvon Martin clearly dead on the ground, and in some of them, his face very clearly visible. Martin talked about the reaction of his family and how difficult that was for them and for everyone in the courtroom. But how effective was it to show those photos to the jury?
Well, as Martin says, it truly humanizes the drama, this tragic loss of a teenager. So it can have no other impact or effect but to really touch people's hearts. But this is done in every trial. You always show the picture of the victims. You show the entry. You show the injury. And it was done here. And these pictures, relative to some other cases, are not especially, according to the law, especially gruesome or inflammatory. So you didn't even hear an objection from the defense when they were moved to be placed into evidence, because they are appropriate, and they are appropriate for the jurors to recognize and see that there's somebody, a young man, who's dead, and they have a very serious task in front of them about determining guilt or acquittal for George Zimmerman.
And now that they have a human face to this in a way that they didn't before, because they, like all of us, were probably familiar with those few pictures of Trayvon that we've all seen so many times, but now that his death is now personal, they have to decide who they believe. And the opening statements that we reported yesterday, obviously someone used the F word on the George Zimmerman side. Then we had the knock-knock joke, sorry, on the George Zimmerman side, that also went over very terribly in that courtroom. How well did each side rebound today, do you think?
Well, I think the state could only go one place, and that they did just fabulous yesterday. The defense, on the other hand, it couldn't have been more miserable for them. And I think the defense today really got some credibility. They started, and interestingly, they had Don West, who was the subject of that horrible knock-knock joke and that very questionable opening statement, go ahead and still question some witnesses right at the beginning. And he did well, and it showed that a style yesterday was similar to a style today. And I think that was a good thing to do, because it showed the jurors that he does a good job, and that's just his personality. And the defense ended on a very high note today. There was some strong attacks. It was cross-examination, some credibility issues, with the last witness of the day. And I think that today goes to the defense. Not as strong as yesterday went to the state, but they gained a lot of credibility, and really it's not any smooth sailing for either one of them. There is really a hard-fought trial going on.
All right, Mark Nijame, thank you as always. We'll see you soon. Now, before Trayvon Martin was shot, George Zimmerman actually was walking through his Florida neighborhood with a bullet in the chamber of his gun, ready to fire it. Now, this could be a crucial detail in his murder trial, leaving some wondering if Zimmerman knew how to safely handle that weapon or not. Our David Mattingly is out front.
Listen, if you're following the George Zimmerman case, you've probably heard this sound before. That's the sound of a shot from a K-Tech PF9 handgun, just like the one caught on a 911 call the moment George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin.
All right, what is your...
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
Zimmerman carried the gun legally, but prosecutors seem to suggest he was doing more than that.
It wasn't necessary for the defendant to rack it to load a round. It was ready to go.
Zimmerman was carrying the gun with a bullet already loaded in the chamber and ready to fire. Was this a sign he was planning to do harm when he encountered Trayvon Martin? Gun safety inspector Larry Holt tells me Zimmerman was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Was he carrying it properly?
Properly, if I was ready to defend myself, you bet.
Holt says this gun is designed strictly for personal protection. One of the cheaper guns on the market selling for between $300 and $400, made to be concealed, carried, and ready to shoot. It's called carrying hot. So you recommend to your students to carry this one hot?
Absolutely.
That's because it comes with a safety feature, an extra long trigger pull that prevents accidental firing. But we also learn watching this trained marksman.
You missed. I know. It's not a real accurate gun.
The Kel-Tec PF9 is only effective in close quarters, something else noted by prosecutors.
Have you ever heard a prosecutor raise these points before?
No, I have not.
Florida firearms attorney Cord Bird says state attorneys could be targeting specific jurors by trying to use the features of Zimmerman's own gun against him.
I think amongst most people familiar with firearms, that line of argument would be totally unpersuasive. But once again, to someone who's unsophisticated in the usage of firearms, possibly it could be persuasive.
So, David, amazing when they're trying to say, look, just the way this gun is designed, the way you would have to pull the trigger, that just having this gun alone would be evidence of intent to kill. Is that a line that will work with this jury?
Well, when you look at the makeup of the jury, just 6 members here, 4 of them indicate that they have family members who own firearms, that they might be familiar with weapons and not susceptible to that argument. One of the 4 actually used to have a concealed carry permit. So it looks like that the prosecution might be taking a chance here.
All right, David Mattingly, thank you very much. Pretty amazing, though, all those new facts we've learned about that gun tonight. Still to come, the latest on the Paula Deen controversy.